A hearty welcome to all of our Janaranjani friends to this special program of Yuvaranjani. As the name suggests, this is all about the youth and listening about what they feel and what they think and what they propose about a current topic that they are interested in. So the topic is chosen by them, and they have done their own consultations, and now they are ready to make a podcast for the benefit of all of us. And so I welcome here the Yuvaranjani coordinator, Mr. Vinayak Sharma, and our youth resources, Mr. Adarsh Malapaka and Mr. Kasyap Ponnoru. So welcome all. So the stage is yours.
All right. Thank you, Shagaru. All right. Yes. Hello to everyone in the audience and any listeners. My name is Vinayak. I'll be kind of coordinating the conversation today. We got an interesting topic. We'll be talking about AI. It's a hot topic that everyone's kind of keeping an eye on, and there's a lot of hype around it. We'll talk about from our own experiences, and I'll get a brief introduction for the others in a moment. My background, I work at Deloitte in AI and data consulting. So I've experience working with different types of clients in different industries and kind of helping them implement their data systems and also looking into how they can apply AI. I'm based in Sydney, Australia, so that's kind of the context that I know. Yeah, I'm excited to discuss this and see where the discussion goes. Um, and I'll introduce my co-hosts. We have Adarsh and Kasyap. So maybe Adarsh, do you want to go first? Give an intro of yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vinayak. Thanks, Ushagaru. My name is Adarsh Malapaka. I live just outside Washington, D.C. in the United States. I am a robotics engineer by profession at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab, where I predominantly make robots, or at least make vehicles autonomous. Um, have had some experience working with AI over the past 5+ years now in different, especially both from a software and as a hardware perspective. So really looking forward to this discussion. So happy for this opportunity. So happy that I got to meet Vinayak and Kashyap as well.
Yeah,
We had quite some discussions.
yeah,
Um,
awesome.
yep.
Yeah, excited to kind of pick your brain on that, especially on the hardware side. Kashyap, do you want to give a quick intro to yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Kasyap, and I am working as a software professional from Sydney. So I am pretty new to the AI world. Probably started this year, with the advancement of the chatbots and basically prompt-based AI tools like ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot and things like that. So yeah, that's where I've started my AI journey. It's been pretty exciting, and yeah, like Dash mentioned, we had quite a few interesting perspectives around how people use AI around the world. Yeah, very happy to be here. Thank you. Thanks for
Oh,
intro.
amazing. All right, let's jump into things. The kind of flow we're thinking is we'll do a bit of a kind of history short overview just to get everyone up to speed on how we kind of got to the current status. And then we'll talk a little bit more about like how each of us has used AI, both kind of in personal context and professional context. And then we'll maybe talk about the future kind of projections, what the impacts could be in our professions, economically, environmentally. Um, yeah, so Adarsh, you want to kick us off? Give a overview?
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Vinayak. Um, what I would like to do now is kind of set some context to a quick context to the history of AI. It's it's often easy to get carried away when we say AI as to just to think of it as simply ChatGPT, whereas and to think that it only came about like in the past 3 4 years, whereas there's been a huge body of research, many people working on it for the past 50, 60 plus years easy now. So where it all began is obviously the famous Turing test. Alan Turing, a famous British computer scientist, devised this way of how machines could think. From there, we moved on to something called as a perceptron, or a basic version of what we would call as a neural network. Basically, researchers trying to mimic how our brain kind of works in a way, how different nodes in our brain work. And then from there, the community kind of went into building solutions in deep learning, which is basically saying when you add many of these neural networks or many of these layers in neural network, you can identify patterns in, say, images or text or videos and so on. And so the community went along that route of focusing heavily on images per se. And then at the same time, I think this was around the early 2000s when chatbots started coming up. In fact, there were
Yeah.
chatbots before ChatGPT as well, if people haven't come across them. The only thing was they weren't as intelligent and as smart as what ChatGPT is right now. But there were chatbots, and you could engage with them. You could ask them questions, and they'll give you back answers in some capacity. And then eventually, there were some breakthroughs in AI research, and especially in natural language processing. Some of them include, say, the transformer architecture, attention mechanism, which eventually, laid the seed for what we right now have as GPTs, or locally known as ChatGPT, Gemini, and all those generative AI or large language models that we have right now. So it's kind of the whole brief introduction to how the whole AI landscape has been. I'm just going to add one thing here is, for those of you who are new to AI, or you've never really dealt with it much, but you still have questions about where will AI take us and so on. And especially if you actually want an insight into the early chatbots of the early 2000s, I would actually recommend this book called The Most Human Human. I actually, in fact, have it with me. It's right here. Sorry, it's
Yeah,
blurred out.
nice.
It's by Brian Christian, and it takes a philosophical route to what makes us humans in the whole world of AI from an early 2000s perspective. So it's an interesting read if you're interested. But that's pretty much the history.
Yeah, no, that's a great overview. I think a few things that I'd like to comment on. I do like that book recommendation, and I think that's one of the things that's fascinated me so much about like learning about AI and the research into it, because it almost like puts a mirror in front of us humans. Is like, how do we replicate what we are, like what we're thinking, how our brains work, how we make decisions. It gets us to really examine how humans work to then reproduce some of that into machines, which is so fascinating. But yeah, Kashyap, did you have any comments on that, on the history aspect?
I think I'd like to just add one point to that, especially with the Gen AI. So it's just fascinating that people usually don't take notice as to how fast, the technology changes, right? So there was a paper, I think it was published from Google about the transformers. So that's kind of a game changer as to people started thinking around those lines as to how we can leverage the conversational approach to the chat, to the Gen AI. And then that kind of helped in developing companies like ChatGPT and basically a lot of OpenAI tools. So that essentially it went so viral that I think there were around 1 million users in about like 5 days, things like that. So
Yeah.
that kind of just fascinates as to how quick people adapt to the new things, if it is so, if it is useful. So the same thing
Right.
happened with things like social media, with Facebook and other social media sites. So it's always good to go back and reflect as to what has actually started this. Uh,
Yeah.
and then once people started adopting, then people kind of went into resourcing it, and lots of people kind of advertise it with the word of mouth, and slowly the company started adapting it as well, and now it has become like a norm. If you're not doing AI, then you're not doing it right, sort of a thing. So yeah, it's always good
Yeah.
to go back and reflect on those things as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's quite amazing the speed of adoption that we've had with these kind of chat interfaces. Um, because it's made it a lot more accessible because anyone can use it. It's just you just type, use normal natural language to interact with the systems versus before the older systems were a bit more inaccessible. You need to have like machine learning background, coding background to even get something useful out of them. So I think that's been the main game changer is the interface is a lot more human friendly. And I think one thing that I do want to point out, like one of the main kind of transformation points for AI in the past, I'd say 2 decades, was the use of GPUs.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is because so GPUs are graphical processing units, right? Um, so in your computer, you have the CPU, the central processing, which does all of the number crunching of processing, and then you have the GPU, which does the processing to how to display things on a screen. And that was mainly pushed forward by animation and graphics for games because games are very intensive. You're building these 3D environments, and to actually build those 3D environments, you have to do a lot of calculations in parallel. So CPUs tend to just do one thing after another in sequential order. But GPUs, they're optimized to do multiple parallel operations. They'll be doing like millions of operations in parallel. Because when you're rendering a 3D model, you have to render multiple different pixels all at once. You can't just do them one by one, it takes too long. And then the funny thing is, optimizing hardware to work in like do parallel processing like that was really good for neural networks and machine learning because the same thing applies. You have to do millions of calculations all at once rather than waiting for doing them one by one. It's way more efficient to do them in parallel. So yeah, once kind of machine learning took advantage of GPUs, then like the learning was like insane. The outputs, the capabilities exploded. Um, and like, um, I won't go too far into this because I want to discuss this later. But so everyone's probably heard of NVIDIA. NVIDIA is the biggest name in kind of hardware for GPUs. Um, their revenue was like 90% for gaming GPUs and like for before like ChatGPT, and then after ChatGPT came in, now the majority of their revenue comes from data centers because people want to use their GPUs for AI. Um, so yeah, anyway, uh, it's a bit of a sidetrack. But yeah, um,
I'm just gonna add something real quick here.
yeah,
One is I just realized that we've been using AI terms like AI and Gen AI, and I think I want to
yeah,
just set the base of what
yeah,
each of these mean. So in general, artificial intelligence, as Vinayak said, people started trying to mimic how the human brain works. And I think the general idea of AI is to predict something, to predict or maybe to like classify something, to like distinguish between things, or to pick something, or to predict what's happening next or what's coming next. Versus when we say Gen AI or generative AI, as Kashyap mentioned, the focus is specifically on generating something. So in the context of say ChatGPT or LLMs, we're generating text based on input, but it could also be generating images or videos as other models have been existing right now. So yeah, thought I'd just set that base as well.
Yeah, and that's the important context.
And do you want to like explain for the users what is LLM as well, just for the context?
Yeah, sure. Do you wanna go ahead, Kasyap? Have a go at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So essentially, when we talk about LLMs, it's mainly around the the Turing machine concept, which others has mentioned. So whatever the questions that we have, there is a context that is set in the background for all these the tools, and then it uses the prompt as some sort of an input to whatever the responses that you expect, and it's kind of a black box, and there's a lot that goes within those tools to get you the proper response. So that's the reason why these machines are like very confident when they say, and then people try and kind of warn you as well as to whatever the responses that you get in those tools are not the accurate responses, because system does kind of a probability calculation in the background to give you the proper response. So one of the interesting aspects here is, instead of you going into websites in like Google search and things like that, the system does that for you, and then it picks up like, let's say, top 10 results, and then it tries to filter out what is the right one. And then for that to do that, there is a set of rules that it follows. And it's always important for us to kind of refine that context and try and understand whether it's making any sense or is it relevant for my context, before we go ahead
Yeah.
and blindly trust that as well. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. I think some good metaphors I've heard for kind of understanding how these chat GPT or LLMs, the large language models, work is I think I'll give the two examples. So the one good one I've heard is like it's like a text calculator. So everyone's probably here's used a normal calculator. You know, you punch in numbers, you punch in your operations, and then you'll get the output. In a sense, these chat GPT interfaces, they're the same, except instead of punching in numbers, you're giving a prompt. So you're giving it a sentence, a word, a paragraph. And then based on that, it does its own calculations with whatever it's set up as, and then it produces content based on that. The not so nice metaphor I've heard is it's basically fancy autocomplete. So anyone that's typed on a phone, you know, it has the automatic, like it fixes your spelling mistakes and everything. That is actually a form of AI there. That autocomplete, that checking of spelling and grammar, that is a form of AI, but we don't really consider it as because it's very basic. It's very limited, very narrow AI. Yeah, some people kind of say these chat interfaces are kind of just an extension of that. It's just, you know, it's auto completing based on your question. It auto completes what the most likely answer would be based on that question. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So just others, I have a question for you as well, just in terms of robotics, right? So there's uh, I come from an IT background, so for me, it's all pretty new, right? For example, I use AI mostly for generating a piece of code. So I know exactly what my solution is, and then there is, block A, block B, block C that I want to write. And previously, it used to take like, probably like half a day for me to write the whole thing. Now it takes like half a minute for the whole thing to generate, because I know exactly what I want that tool to do. For example, give the algorithm, give the language, give the set of instructions, and then it just pops out a piece of code, and then I just plug it in into my my bigger piece of code. But whereas when it comes to robotics, like you mentioned, it has to take its the several different factors into consideration, and then essentially when we integrate something into hardware, that's like kind of hardwired, right? So you can't really change it. So how did that change, in the past few years? With the introduction of Gen AI, is there any impact or any difference at all? Or what sort of difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in terms of robotics, how Gen AI has been kind of influencing it the most is um, so our goal is to make robots intelligent and autonomous, to make them able to perceive the environment and make decisions based on the perception, right? Um, now the now the usual way is we've been making robots that are specific to tasks. That is to say, okay, if we want to clean our house, we have vacuum cleaning robots, and we program them or we add algorithms in there that are specific to that. We give them data sets or we give them, tools that are specific to that use case. But what the community is looking at right now is a term called AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is to try and come up with machines or robots that can do many things at the same time. So on that tangent, there are right now humanoid robots that are basically these robot humans, which in a far distant future would eventually at someday be able to do many tasks, right? Like maybe help you out with dishes, maybe go and help in a warehouse making cars. Um, so that's where I think these large language models, or maybe in a more general term, foundation models have are being researched heavily. The other thing I can think of is um, to to use these foundation models or large language models to make sense of things spatially, in the sense of in the past we would just look at, let's say, if you're in the context of say automated driving or autonomous vehicles, you would just say, okay, here's a road, here's a pedestrian, here's a car. um, there's research where they're looking at how you can use these models to then say to give more context. So there's actually a branch under LLMs or Gen AI that's called in context learning, which is to say how can you use contextual information to come up with decisions. So I think that's also been like a push of using these models to get more like how do I call this, subcomponent or like spatial awareness of the environment.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, because yeah, as you said, you can scale that prediction capability to anything. It could be text, it could be images, and it could be spatial data. I'd never thought of that. That's really cool actually. So it's like almost like I guess I'm thinking of like autonomous car, right? A car is detecting the road ahead. It can only see up to a certain point, but from that data, it can also maybe like project and have like a future prediction of like what could be ahead, what could be behind things. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah.
Interesting. So if I just extend that, the what do you say, the large sort of calculations into present current situation, and then we hear about things like quantum computers, helping out in the calculations because. The main challenge right now with AI, if we go back to the hardware side of things, that there's a lot of energy that takes up for these queries to run in the background. So I just want to just open this topic for conversation just to say that whether the quantum computers is the future, because when our computer started, right now it's in our hand like in the form of a mobile phone, but when it started it's like it's built in a huge rooms. There's
Sure.
just hundreds of people working on it, and then it just came down slowly over the past how many number of years, right? So that the same thing we might expect for quantum computers as well. Right now it's like it's in a laboratory with a very less temperature and very precise environment
Sure.
just for it to run. And probably what we might think of because of the Gen AI and the new tools that come into picture, we might have to kind of think of using the quantum computers more, and there might be a lot of research going on in that area as well. So, what do you guys think?
Yeah. I can kind of briefly talk about that and I'll pass it to Adarsh as well. I think quantum computing is like as far as I understand, there's definitely like good use cases for it in specific types of problems, which need like lots of like large amount of parallel processing I don't know as much detail. I do know in terms of hardware, it's quite difficult right now to implement. As you said, you need very low temperatures to actually be able to use quantum effects in a quantum computer. At higher temperatures, it just becomes way too unpredictable, and you can't really control
Yeah.
or do anything with the quantum particles that you have. Um, so I think that's a major hurdle. I did hear at the start of the year that Microsoft made a bit of a breakthrough with quantum computing. Um, but yeah, it kind of seems like quite a few years away. And I'd argue it'd be probably in like some sort of data center where you just access it via the cloud rather than local at the moment. But anyway, others, do you have anything?
I'm just gonna echo what both of you said. I think, yeah, Microsoft launched Mayona. I think that was the chip that
Yes.
it was
Yes.
called. And again, echoing what you guys said, it's still very premature technology. It hasn't been able to scale up yet. It's still kind of proof of concept at this point, I guess. Still researchy. Um, all, I'm in no means an expert on quantum physics or quantum mechanics, but my understanding is it is able to do large set of computations fast, but I'm not sure if its parallel abilities haven't really tested yet. Um, that's something that's exciting for me in the future, I guess.
Yeah. I think yeah, it's funny because people are kind of seeing quantum computing on the horizon. So I've already heard of some projects that are working on like quantum safe cryptography. So that's one of
Mm,
the things that is a
mm.
bit of a threat of quantum computing because it will break
Yep.
a lot of the encryption that's currently used.
Yep.
Um, so people are already kind of thinking ahead and like, okay, how do we develop cryptography that's protected against like brute force attack by quantum computers? Because they can kind of crack that a lot quicker
Yep.
than normal
That's when
computing.
the world will break. I
Yeah,
think.
but that's why people are already
Yeah.
working on the solutions, which I think is awesome. But yeah, I think I just want to transition into maybe we can talk about like how each of us kind of uses AI in our context. I think maybe I can start. I'll talk a bit briefly about how I kind of have used it. In my work, I've mainly used it for software applications because I do a lot of like data engineering, so setting up data pipelines on data platforms, writing a lot of SQL code. So that's like interacting with databases, putting data in, reading data out. Um, and it's been super useful for writing code. I honestly got to say. Um, the only issue is like with these models, if you ever use it, you have to give enough context because it's kind of like they only know as much as you tell them, and they'll work off of that knowledge. So the more context you can give, the more specific you can make your query, the better response they'll give. It's almost like as if you were working with like a, I guess like an internship or a fresh like graduate. You have to kind of give them enough guidance that they'll actually do the work properly. Um, so that's been an interesting experience. It can be quite kind of frustrating at times because it feels like you have to put in so much effort to make this prompt and like give it enough context and give it the right instructions and then you'll get the output. But I think it's definitely sped up my process in terms of like um making really complicated SQL queries in like 30 seconds and then I can ask it like, hey, this is a SQL query. Can you explain this back to me? And it will like produce documentation and it'll explain each of the code, like how it all works. So its capabilities are insane in terms of yeah, what it can do, but it just needs a lot of guidance, is what my experience has been. I've also found recently I've been playing with I think Kasyap mentioned GitHub Copilot. There's other tools like that as well, like Claude Code. There's also Gemini Code Assist that I've been using because I've been working in the Google Cloud platform, so in the Google ecosystem. Um, that's been a bit of a game changer when I started using that is because it makes it much easier to provide the model context. So it can see my whole code base, it can see my folders, my files, my code, and I can just tell it like, hey, this is my code. I need to make this change. And it will read my code, it will understand what's happening as best as it can. It doesn't always get it right. And then it'll make the changes that I ask of it in the code itself. And then I just have to go and do the testing. So that kind of speeds up the testing loop, for sure. And it's been very helpful. But sometimes also frustrating because sometimes it gets very overconfident about certain solutions that I know are wrong, and it keeps trying to implement those wrong solutions. And yeah, it's like working with a very stubborn, frustrating coworker at times. But yeah, that's kind of my experience with using AI. Yeah, over to one of you guys if you have any comments or you want to add something.
Yeah, so probably I can add on top of that. Yeah, like you mentioned, I think it needs a lot of context from what I have noticed as well. So like I said, I've been using it mostly to to generate the code as much as I can. So I'm a software developer, so I mainly use it for that purpose. And there are very interesting applications as well. So one of the things that we noticed is reviewing a pull request, for example. So for those who are not from IT, so pull request is something that you write a code and then somebody else will have a look at it, verify whether it's looking all good or not, and then they approve it, and only then the code passes to the next phase. The Copilot has been very helpful in trying to address any of the issues in the new code that's coming in. So that's actually very helpful for somebody who's maintaining a piece of code. And also things like documentation. So for a software developer, documentation is always like a bottleneck. We know the value of it, but we don't generally do it. I think that's the headache for mainly the development team. But GitHub, or not the GitHub Copilot, but usually the Gen AI tools in general, they're very helpful in writing those proper descriptions. So I know what exactly I want in that particular document. So I can just tell those as prompts, and then I can always ask for a proper solution design, or a proper end-to-end Jira ticket, for example, just to explain the user story in a better way, where people can understand and test out of it. So that sort of helps us a lot. And then I just want to kind of just put some sort of a negative aspect as well, where like Vinayak mentioned, it gets overconfident, and whenever there's a big sort of big story that it has written, it usually people don't go ahead and verify it again. So that again adds up to the confusion for whoever uses it later on. So we need to be very cautious while using that. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it from my end as to how we use it. Adarsh, what do you think? This is all going in terms of IT direction, so there must be a lot of difficulties or challenges from your end as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I actually use AI for three major reasons. I think one is research. And in terms of research, how I use it is one, data aggregation, in the sense of if I'm posed with a problem, I use these LLMs or ChatGPT to basically say, hey, this is my problem statement, or this is the area I want to work on. Can you list out the major papers published in the past 5 years on this topic, and include like a 5-line, 10-line summary, just summarizing what's in it. So I use it to pick what papers are there, and that way I can go and then read those papers. But I also use it to summarize papers for me. Now, the issues with doing these two things, what I've observed, have been when it gives you a list of papers, there are times when it gives you links as well to them, and these links can be broken, they're outdated, or it probably hallucinated to think that there have been instances where it gave me some recommendations and said this paper exists, when in reality I couldn't find that paper online. So there have been cases like that, which is fine because you're just aggregating data. You can find it all, obviously. I think the more concerning flaw of it is evident in its research capabilities. I'm not saying it has bad research capabilities. I'm saying it gives you well thought out summaries and condenses everything. But the issue is, since these have been trained in a specific way, um, it's often the AI bot giving you its interpretation of what's happening rather than leaving interpretation to you as the user. Because most of these papers have subtext to them as well. So what I'd like to do is usually just say, okay, can you summarize the abstract introduction and the conclusions part of this paper? And then with that as context for me, I then go and read the paper and have some base understanding of what the author is trying to say. So that's research. Second, as Kashyap and Vinayak have mentioned, obviously software dev, use it to generate code. I'm sometimes very scared by its capabilities of being replaced someday.
Yeah.
But on the bright side, somebody at work once mentioned they actually use phrases like please, kindly. They're very gentle and warm with the AI, so that in the future, if these do take us over, then they're at least nice to you and not to other people. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of, I think I predominantly use it for code generation, and it's been a game changer there. Absolutely. The third has been in writing, where I personally feel like I think I spend a lot of time trying to write things down, or even if it's official communication, grant proposals, and so on. Uh, ChatGPT has been a game changer there as well. And again, as Vinayak had mentioned, what matters is you giving enough context to what this system is about to do, that thereby minimizing risk of any hallucination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to just counter that point. I heard, I think, somebody from a major company saying that don't use these phrases like please and kindly and things like that, because whatever the conversation topics that you use, ChatGPT's for it, it's like an input and it has to process them, and it's like a waste for an AI tool to kind of process these nice words
Yeah.
just to yeah, just because it doesn't really matter for it. And the other thing I wanted to mention was essentially setting up the context, right? So most of the people don't know that, you can always, set the context as a whole for all of your chats, for the tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatnot. So that really helps. So I don't want the nice sugar coating for my responses. So, or you can say that, whatever I ask from now on, just give me that in this language. So you can just set that whole sort of a kind of a parent context, and that will be applicable for all your future responses, which really helps save a lot of time, because every time you ask for something, it gives a response, and then you want to kind of fine tune it in a way that you want to use. So that was really helpful for me as well. So yeah, it's all
Yeah.
on the depends on the context.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, I think I would want to emphasize, like, given that we've all talked about our experience, like, yes, there are problems definitely with these tools. They're very useful. They've like accelerate certain tasks quite a lot, but we can't quite rely on them 100%. Like at the end of the day, it has to be reviewed by a human and like made sure it's working correctly, because these systems, they don't exist in the real world. They don't think like
Yeah.
humans. They don't have any responsibilities, right? That
Yeah.
hold them in, you can't hold them for criminal charges if something goes wrong. It falls to the human. So we have to make sure we review like everything they produce.
Yeah.
Um,
I just want
but
to give
but
an
but
example.
um, well, also I just want to say like in that context of that, like people are developing ways to make these systems more reliable. And the problems that we have now, it's not going to be the same like 5, 10 years from now. And already, I think, as Kashyap said, is like you can do a lot of customization with these tools. You can make them work in your like in the way that you want them to, so to produce better results. And so many people are working on ways to do this. I think will solve a lot of the challenges we're facing today, in the coming years.
Yeah. So I just want to give, just to highlight that
Mm.
point, an example where we have, people like content writers. where people write the a set of articles or whatever that you want to call it, which just displays on the website like an information around the product, things like that. So somebody has written this whole kind of I think 10 pages articles on using the Gen AI tools, and they shared it with one of the content writers. And then he pointed out like hundreds of mistakes in that essay. For a normal user, it looks pretty nice, pretty neat, very helpful. It is helpful. But yeah, like you said, I think it's always better to kind of go back and revalidate. And I think we do have a question from Raj Garu from the chat.
Yes, I do want to cover that. I think we covered a few different examples.
Yeah.
In terms of, yeah, customer support roles, I actually did use an AI tool because I recently signed up to an internet plan with Superloop, and I used the chat functionality, and it was definitely a ChatGPT LLM sort of model because it like I asked it in natural language, like, hey, can you confirm my preferred activation date? And it went through, it accessed my account details, and it came up with a really nice formatted response. So I think it's slowly starting to creep into use in the industry and customer facing roles, especially.
Yeah. So on that note, I think it's always important to have a look at the impact, so to say, because it feels a bit overwhelming with all the things going around. Sure, you don't have to kind of create a PPT from scratch, for example. You have tools like Gamma, and similarly with the Excel sheet, you can basically embed all the your formulas into the Excel sheet and things like that. So one of the things that I think somebody mentioned to me in my previous last year during one of these conferences, that AI is mostly used as a calculator, but it basically it's a tool, right? So the fascinating thing about human beings adapting to a particular thing is you tend to look at the bigger problems if you have a solution for the smaller ones. So I guess that's where it will go. Definitely, some jobs will become redundant, but it's not like a threat to everybody's job. I think people will find a better roles, using the AI as a tool to do monotonic tasks. So I think that's where we should probably put our future thought process rather than getting worried about what happens to my job and things like that. I think people will always find their way. So there is no need to panic, is what I would assume. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I'm just going to really quickly add a couple of tools that I've used. For the most part, since my organization has a premium license of ChatGPT, that's what I predominantly use. But I think just having ChatGPT isn't enough. Deciding which model under ChatGPT or OpenAI to use for which task is important. So there are specific models for writing, specific models that do great at coding, and so on. So you'd have to figure out which ones to use. But apart from ChatGPT, what I have used is uh, Vinayak mentioned about Copilot for coding. I use something similar. It's called Tab 9, which essentially can look at your whole, as Vinayak said, your whole code base and give you instructions or details based on the whole thing and not just the one code script that you give it. The other thing I used is Crew AI, CREW, Crew AI, which is this online tool that lets you set up AI agents. We can get into what AI agents are in a bit, probably, but I was specifically interested in looking at if we can use these AI agents, a bunch of them, to generate more cautionary measures in events of like adverse weather phenomena. Weather prediction in general is a highly complicated
yeah, it's very compute
area.
intensive. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, interesting.
and I've used Dolly to
Yeah.
generate logos for my projects in general
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary good at generating images. I mean, any kind of graphic that you want, in any kind of style that you want as well. I think it's been a couple of years now, but they've all added most of the image generation models. They've added safeguards so they don't produce like copyright material, because that was a bit of an issue. That was like, okay, they're producing images of like copyrighted and trademarked brands, which isn't good. Um, so they've come up with solutions for that. Um, yeah. Um, so I had a point in my head, but I've forgotten. Um, all right, I guess yeah, I think one thing, oh yeah, that's what I want to talk about. In terms of like the AI companies, in terms of future projection, um, as I've like done kind of research into a bit of these companies, the one that I trust a bit more is probably Anthropic. They're the ones that create Claude. They do a lot of work into the safety aspect of the models that they create and researching like potential misuse and how to safeguard against it. They actually publish a lot of articles, a lot of papers on like how they're kind of safeguarding their models and the potential problems or like misuse of them. Um, so there's like kind of like an active testing that they're doing and they publish about that. I don't really see that as much from the other companies, which kind of concerns me because this is like this is very useful technology, but it also comes with a lot of risks and a lot of like real world consequences if it goes wrong. Um, so I think we just need to be big. Some people I find are a bit too eager to get to AGI, artificial general intelligence. Um, that kind of scares me, honestly, is like something that's as capable or even more capable as any human, can be quite a risk, and be very hard to control. Um, so anyway, just wanted to make that point. Um, did you guys have any comments on that or anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think it makes sense because essentially, when we're talking about the chatbots, like you essentially have the whole details of a particular user, whether we're talking about, like a utility tools or anything which is basically serving a purpose.
Sorry, could you speak up a little bit? Your voice is a bit low.
Is that better now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, I think with the chatbots and like the generative chatbots in particular, they will have the context of the whole profile of the user, which is basically like a stored in a secure location. But if we give access to the AI tools, essentially, that's where you need to be very careful as to not leak any of the personal information. So yeah, like you mentioned, I think those rules are the guidelines are pretty important. I guess we'll see kind of more laws around it as well. Right now, there isn't much governance around it. So probably that's where the focus will be as well in the future. Um, Otherwise, it will get really difficult to make things accountable. So who is responsible for what? And that's very important, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
And
cool. I think we've been talking. I think we've discussed quite a bit on a range of topics. Maybe we can open up to Q&A if anyone in the audience has any particular questions or anything they want us to expand on in what we've discussed.
Actually, we are quite bewildered about the depth of knowledge that you have exhibited and also the width that you have shown in the context of Gen AI and related things. So really, it's mind-boggling. I don't have questions, but really, I want to go through all your conversations again because you have given a lot of substance into the words, and so I should admit that I'm quite impressed with the energy and enthusiasm that you have shown. to organize such very well-planned conversation. So thank you very much, and I will wait for others to talk.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay, this is Raj here, called Nataraj Purimeti. Fantastic topic and a lot of information. Maybe I can't sleep tonight. I have to keep on understanding what we are talking about. I was the one who posted a question about this. We, in a way, I should explain in a different way. I used to work with Indian Space Research Organization. In those days, we used to have an IBM or a big computer in a big room, and we used to feed some kind of cards so that they will do the programming. I think Kasyap mentioned it as one of those earlier days. Now I'm doing a lot of things with the technology, even though I lived with those things long back. I can only remember that because we don't do those things anymore. Similarly, I think I posed a question too, like we are already affected and using AI in our day-to-day life. We don't recognize it. I have a EV. I try to leave my hand when I'm driving on motorways just to see whether AI does the job. And yes, it does the job. Only thing is, in Australian rules, it says hold the steering wheel. That's all. So the point is, we have it around, we are experiencing it, maybe not to the extreme as I mentioned in the EV, but in day to day life. And even though I'm at the age where I don't really feel that I'm doing certain things, but my younger colleagues in my workplace, they do say that they use a lot of GPT, chat GPT systems, kind of AI tools in getting the results sooner.
Yeah.
So my question, rather than the comment, is I think for a general public to identify what are all the things we are already doing now. I mean, I think I mentioned in my question as I don't see any human being on the other end when I talk to a customer support. That's the simplest way of putting it. But I do see, I mean, even you go to Aldi, you can buy a $300 robotic machines to do the vacuum cleaning or whatever you call it. There are quite a few things that you have in our day-to-day life. And if you can mention a few of them in the interest of general public, one thing. And the second one, which I would like to highlight in the whole point is, yes, I have been in the software industry. I have heard about quite a few testing tools that are automated. Even I use quite a few things, automated tools. Not necessarily identifying that that is part of the AI, part of the thing, but in the day-to-day life, I suppose by the time I retire, the younger generation who takes over will use a lot more AI kind of tools. And I think Adarsh mentioned that he is working on what you call it as driverless vehicles, something like that. So even though we hear that, we fear that too. I'm not saying the technology is a kind of a thing where you always say that you will be happy to use it, but at the same time you don't know, because I think as a human being, a change is always looked upon as I can't handle it. I will put another comment later on. I'm not saying this is the one. So these two are the kind of questions I wanted to put forward and see whether you can give us some examples.
Yeah, absolutely. I think your point about how we don't always recognize AI system, I think that's spot on. I think there's a lot of tools, even before these chat interfaces came up, that are AI that we just don't recognize. Because I think, as others kind of defined, like AI is any system other than a human that we create that can make decisions or make predictions. And something as simple as like autocomplete when you're typing, that is also a form of AI. Even when you're doing a Google search, or if you're trying to, or if you're looking at your kind of notifications and your feed on like social media or YouTube, those recommendations, those search results, they are a form of AI because it's you're typing in a prompt or you're making certain interactions with the system. That system is then like collecting that data, it's processing that, and then based on what you've done, it's then providing you results or providing you recommendations that would be like useful for you or for whatever purposes. That is a form of AI, but we use it all the time. We don't even recognize it because it's so natural to interact with. And I think that's probably the interesting transition that happens with these systems is once they become useful, we stop calling them AI. They're just systems that we use. Um, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
bit of a
it's
philosophical one, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's mostly to do along in the lines of the electronic appliances as well, right? When the electricity was introduced, people started inventing various different things like fans, refrigerators, grinders, and
Mm.
whatnot, right? So then later on, it just became part of life, and nobody really thought of like how important invention that is. I think that's where the AI will head as well. I just want to add a couple of examples I could think of in terms of the AI tools. So, for example, I've heard the tools. There's a lot of research going on around in terms of where we do the aviation. So we there are not many, but there are definitely few scenarios where two flight paths collide, and then there was a basically an accident because of a human error. So if you have AI deployed in such scenarios, those things will definitely not happen, provided we give that proper context and do the proper research. So I guess there's a lot of research going on around those lines. Even simple examples like sorting out goods inside a warehouse. I've heard people using drones a lot in terms of updating or just maintaining the warehouse where there's a lot of human intervention that's needed. So
Mm.
these sort of things, I think people will, realize the importance of using the AI. And with the Gen AI, you can always control that from the comfort of your home. Things like smart home appliances as well. There's a lot of scope in that area too. Like, for example, I could think of you're coming into your house, and then your phone has an app, and then you want to basically inform the system within your home to kind of open your garage door. You don't have to like press a switch or do anything.
Mm.
It just recognizes your car and then opens the garage door and things like that. It's like a very simple example. Or even if you can think of like a safety applications as well. Like if there's a smoke, then it'll definitely turn off all the gas and things like that. Or if there's a leak of water pipe, you can have a sensor and then just turns off the main water supply. There's a lot of applications going on around those lines as well. So I think we'll see a lot of these applications in the future as well.
I'll just
Yeah,
add a humorous situation for Kasyap's explanation.
yeah,
I have a EV, I think I just mentioned,
yeah.
and I know I can do a lot of things using my phone. And my wife took the car and she parked somewhere, and I didn't know where the car is. I used some of those tools that it has, like beeping and flashing and all those things. My wife was really like mad at the whole thing, saying, "What is this happening with this car? And I don't know why it is doing everything wrong." Actually, I'm the one who is trying to find where my car is. That's all.
Yeah,
I'm just a humorous thing. I'm not trying to say that.
yeah,
There
yeah.
is a lot more application in our day-to-day life, and I think I will let others
Yes.
panel or the listeners in the group to give some more feedback. I'm just trying to add some humorous
Yeah.
thing to this because, yes, I've been using this, and even though I mentioned to Vinayak, I'm an electronics engineer, I'm fascinated, I fly a lot, and I always think why that pilot comes out and just the flight is still going on, and oh my God, what's happening? And sometimes you think you there are so many things that you do use every day in your life, but you may not recognize. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let others to take over if there are any questions.
I
Yeah.
think more than questions, just wanted to add one small bit, which already the speakers have touched upon. Just in the simple example of driverless car or any vehicle or a bus, then what are the legal aspects in case of an accident? We can never say any system is
Mm.
100%. Okay, there is a small
Mm.
risk. So now there is a lot of work for the legal companies to actually rewrite those insurance details or whatever. So human aspect is always there. And as you three pointed out, the main speakers, really, um, there is, I mean, in my generation we might be afraid of certain things, but on the other hand, you guys see a lot of positivity, and also like the sorting out of the actual tool and getting the best out of it, and thereby we also get better with every
Yeah.
tool. First when the mobile phones came into play, all our children had them, and then we were so panicking, like, oh, how do they use it, whom are they calling, and
Yeah.
how to track them, this and that.
Yeah.
So with every tool comes that sense of fear in the public. But I hope we leave it at that, because we know the value of your time, and especially today, it's really, 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 mind-boggling to think of all these, and you have opened up really a big box of you know interesting viewpoints. So I think Nataraj Garu will propose the vote of thanks, and we can't say how thankful we are to you. Nataraj
Yeah.
Garu, over to you.
So I just want to just say a few words just as a closing lines. So one thing to remember is like AI is not going to take our jobs. It's just gonna kind of improve our jobs, is the way I see it. So even if few jobs get redundant, I think people are like very adaptive to kind of use it as a tool and then rise on top of it. So I think there's nothing to worry. It's all exciting times, and that's how we should see it. And there'll definitely be laws around it. There are definitely going to be improvements around it, but it's definitely going to stay. And I think people should kind of accept it and then take it up as a kind of a tool to improve their lives rather than worry about it, I think.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I think I want to highlight as well, like I think as Usha Garu said, like all technology, like all tools come with risks. Like we use fire for cooking, like most of us use it almost every day. And it is a risk. Like it can cause hurt, like it can burn, it can cause damage, but like we use it and it's very useful and it helps us in our everyday life. But we know how to manage the risks, we understand it, we know how to protect ourselves from it. And as Kashyap said, like change is always difficult. A new tool represents new risks, new unknowns, but we can figure it out. Like we can like understand these tools, understand the risks, and find strategies on how to avoid the risks but get the benefits of them. And I think that's kind of in the changing phase that we're in. And as we kind of are exploring these tools, working out how best to use them, we'll also work out how to protect ourselves from them.
Thank you, Kasyap, for assuring me, even though I'm retiring in the next couple of years. I have to accept what you mentioned is the right point. That's the question everyone has.
Mm.
And I think in the last 15 years or 20 years, I was also mentioning to my children that your education is only valid for 5 years. Not that after 5 years it becomes useless, but the new tools, as we say, AI or whatever it is, new technologies are coming up, and we have to train ourselves. And that's a continuous process. There is no such thing that, okay, I did my engineering in 1979, so I'm going to be all my knowledge, what I learned, has you been used for something else, but I had to kind of adapt. And adaptability is what I call it as a nature of every being, not only human being, every being. You need that. And thank you, Kashyap. I think you did assure that, because that's the common question everyone says. Like, what happens when someone is taking over from India, from the. It's not going to be stopping anything. You have to retrain yourself and find a way of doing something different. And when I did my engineering, I didn't have even software. I didn't have even computer. It used to be a big mainframe computer somewhere in the big room. So you have to adapt, one thing. And I had to congratulate everyone who participated in this one. And some of the information, what you have given, as you rightly pointed out, Vinayak and Adarsh and Kashyap, they are day to day. Some of them are high level, but that's the future. And that's what everyone uses. I had to ask my cousin, I should say my granddaughter, it's not my cousin, to see how do I take a screenshot. And she gave me a small tip about press this, press that, hold this, and do all that.
Yeah.
And the point what I'm making here is we are all learning forever. And I suppose that learning level never stops. Even if you want to stop, banks or somebody will say that, sorry, you have to use a new technology to get your money. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of a thing we have to accept. And you have explained clearly about in your own field. I'm not saying Deloitte. I do deal with Deloitte in a different way, and Adarsh has a different aspect of that. Kashyap has a different aspect, but we have that possibility that you can't escape from the situation. As I said, I bought the EV, I experimented with that. Maybe in the next 10 years, even that becomes totally different. I might have a brain chip implanted in such a way that I don't need even mobile phone. You never know. I mean, these things are going to happen. And there is no stopping. I think the way I look at is people who are complaining are getting bit old, and the people who accept and adapt are still there.
Yeah.
So
So,
thank you once again for all of you to give us those kind of details. And also, one thing I had to mention is you all came from that professional industry rather than me talking about from AI tool, repeating whatever it said, what is AI. And I had to admit, while you are explaining, I went on to Google and asked the question, what is AI? I'm just
Absolutely.
saying that because it's not that I don't know, but sometimes, there is a tool that is explaining, and there are things that even for I'm in sales now, even though I had several transitions in my role, I
Mhm.
can see that even the designing of the new systems and everything is coming through AI process. I don't have to spend the time and my knowledge. You just ask a question, it will tell you given the parameters. So thank you very much for all the explanation that you have given and the details and those names that you have kind of thrown. I will ask my classmates because they are a bit better than me. So I'll ask them, do you know anything of them? And can you explain to me how can I use in my life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do want to encourage like anyone that's listening, any of the things that we've talked about, like maybe check the recording and like Google it, like just search up because it's such a fascinating topic. There's so much being done. People are making so many amazing things with this. yeah, if you're interested in anything, please research. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity for having this. This was like very fascinating and very enriching to have this conversation with the Adarsh
Sure.
and Kasyap.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And quantum computing is something, it will happen. Don't worry, Kashyap. It's just another time, maybe another 10 years later.
Yeah.
So, um, and I think I will conclude this way. And thank you once again for giving us a lot of information. And we will continue to do more programs on different aspects. Thank
Just
you once
before
again.
you three people go, give us one quote that comes to your mind just like that instantly. One quote.
Software is eating the world.
Okay. Okay.
Be the change you
Next.
want to see, but in terms of AI.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah. I'd say probably when you stop learning, I think you will stop making history.
Mm. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. They are very instantaneous. And next time in Yuvaranjani, we want to invite you again, maybe on I don't say lighter topic, but something like cooking, because somewhere in your conversation you mentioned cooking, and I'm really
That's right.
interested
That's
because
right.
I know that you
That's my
three are.
kitchen. I'm ready right now if you want.
I know about all the three of you. So we'll have hopefully more participants to explain things. So very many thanks to all of you, and I will stop the recording at the moment. And really appreciate, and God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you again.
Thank
Thank you
you.
to the Janaranjani team.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.